Lalo's death now makes me feel like not only are they ending Better Call Saul, but they are in some ways ending Breaking Bad again. And that's pretty momentous.
We just take a moment to talk about that Mike scene at the end, which was, to me, a Hall of Fame Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul scene.
Me too.
I
agree.
The way that it was filmed, the way that it was lit, the way you were aware of what was going on in the living room in the same way the characters were, in the way that it played to Jonathan Banks' strengths as the guy who's going to explain to you and bend reality into how it's going to be.
Yeah, and he's going to be this tree bark, like this tree stump who is unmoved by everything that's going on around him.
But again, the cumulative nature of the show, which is its true genius, when he puts on the gloves to pat down Howard's corpse, there's a visceral feeling of disgust that ripples from Jonathan Banks' performance to the audience at this point. Mm-hmm. Because we know this isn't how he dreamed any of this would go. That he was a cop, that he lost his son, that all of these things. And so every act, he's able to do all of this. He's the best there is at it. But whatever, threads of humanity are left, are getting tested each time. But I was just thinking about just Odenkirk and Seahorn. Okay, so Chris, here's a Daddington Island thing that no one's expecting here. But when your kid is like 1 or 2 and you're like, your friends also have 1 or 2-year-olds and you're like, let's get them together. They'll be friends. They're 2. And then the kids sit on opposite ends of the room playing with the same toy.
Right.
And then you worry that your kid is antisocial and you're like, no, it's called parallel play. Like they're not actually ready to socialize yet. But somehow they are playing together even by being in the same room, and that is having some sort of additive effect to their experience in their life. Seahorn and Odenkirk are parallel playing the scene. They are completely siloed in their own super fucked up, traumatized headspace, but they're absolutely in harmony. It's beautiful to watch and then again, the way that it's framed with Jonathan Banks standing there and with all the gnarly shit that's happening in the other room, and the camera peeks out with the characters every so often. That's what the show does best. And then he drops that hammer blow of, we're only finishing the script you guys started.
Right.
You just didn't know what movie you were writing.
Right.
In a few days, Howard Hamlin's car will be found several states away by the water. The odometer will have rolled to the exact number of miles it took to get there. There will be cocaine in the upholstery. That's the story you were setting up for this guy, yeah?
Yeah, and that this was always sort of like the direction this was going in the first place. Because in some ways, we've had, what was it? 3, how long was it? Were we off for like a month between Saul episodes? Like 5 weeks?
I've lost track of time, but yes.
So we've had quite a while to sit there with Howard's death. But I think the fact that we didn't get Saul and Kim's sitting with it, they're going to sit with this next week. And I guess we could segue into what we think is going to come next. This isn't Game of Thrones where you're breaking down Bran's dream, but we know that they've been toying around with this black and white flash forward of Gene now in Nebraska and feeling like the walls are closing in around him. We don't know what happens to Kim, though. We know she has some Nebraska connections. Lalo's gone. Nacho's gone. There's not really a lot else for them to do in this current Albuquerque moment, right? Like, I wonder whether or not we're going to jump ahead.
Yeah, that was my takeaway. And you can, you and I are clearly now very comfortable being wrong about the show. So
sure.
What's one more log for the fire? I finished this episode and felt we got one more. We got one more in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And then we're jumping into the black and white future. That feels right to me. But again, whatever they do is going to be right. I don't presume to know more than them. But yeah, in terms of where else this can go, I think certainly the Mike Gus storylines are settled now into the world that we saw. We also know, I don't want to spoil this, but I imagine people listening know. I mean, we don't know when this is going to happen, but it's been reported that the last significant cameo from Breaking Bad is coming this season, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's been reported. So without saying who, you could probably guess. My guess is that's next week, unless it's in some sort of, across time thing that happens later in the season.
Or some sort of a vision of something that happened or,
Right.
Yeah, right.
So, and I got to say, I'm just really excited about it. There aren't many shows that get to become new shows, but still carry the emotional DNA going forward. I'll say the other thing that fits into this narrative that I think you and I are both mostly in agreement about is that my sense is that Kim is alive coming out of Albuquerque, but where and how?
And what happens to her?
Is she waiting at home, and that's why Gene is worried about his ride home from the Cinnabon, or is he there to find her? Has she found him?
Is she the queen of the South living in Mexico? Like we don't know. Yeah,
we don't know. That story. That is the story of the show. I feel like, the other stuff has now either fallen away or been gunned away, and I'm happy for that. I think that makes sense.
I guess if I had to be succinct about it, I would say that Lalo's death now makes me feel like not only are they ending Better Call Saul, but they are in some ways ending Breaking Bad again. And that's pretty momentous,
meaning that whatever comes next will break the mold again in a different way, like finally get us out of that.
I think it'll inevitably make us feel somewhat differently about Bad. Like, I think El Camino was, an interesting experiment, both in feature-length storytelling for Jesse, and it was largely a thriller action movie. And while it had some making amends or some like coming to terms with what had happened on the show, felt like a little bit more of a, wouldn't it be cool to make another one of these or to do something? Or I always wondered what happened to Jesse the next day. I feel like in some ways, getting into the further future past Breaking Bad allows us to kind of like see what happened on Breaking Bad in a different way, and to understand it in a different way.
I agree with that, and I look forward to it, because one thing where the we know what happens next aspect of this series helps is, and the point that you were mentioning, which is what happened to Howard and, by extension, the whole Lalo events will weigh heavily on Kim and Saul going forward. Well, we know how it weighs on Saul.
Not much.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but he's able to compartmentalize his way right past this one into the most success of his entire existence.
I was rewatching some
life.
Saul Breaking Bad scenes the other day just for fun, and it was like there was one where he explains money laundering to Jesse at the nail salon, and Jesse's just like, incredulous about this, but like that is not a haunted man. Like, now maybe you can, retrocast that as like he's, like you said, compartmentalizing or whatever, but it'll be very interesting to watch these two sort of behavioral arcs kind of match up and lay the piece of paper over one another.
I mean, it's never going to work totally and lay on top of it, because there's no universe where Bob Odenkirk was like, tell me some more haunted backstory for this guy. I mean, when he got on set, that was not the case. But the black and white future gives us a chance to see what a reckoning might really look like. We get to have all of it at once, which I think is hopefully the way, considering how it may or may not shake out, but I think that may ultimately be the triumph of the show. I'm excited for it. You guys did it. Good job. Good job by you guys who are good at what you do and have been justly lauded for it.